I try new stuff all the time, but each time I do it and I'm scared, I step in and magic happens, because we have to be able to be like, okay, I trust this. And if you have the right people around you, and if you have the right state of mind, and if you believe in yourself, and if you believe that, don't worry, this is going to work out, as scared as I am right now, it usually does.
Welcome to HarmonyTALK, a podcast about dreamers and doers. Hear people from all walks of life tell us about their dreams and the moment they knew there was no turning back as they went from dreaming to doing. This podcast is sponsored by AM Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. My name is Greg Frigoletto, your host for this episode. Today, I am super excited to have a conversation with Cherice Barton, choreographer, creative producer, director, and educator. Her path has led to experiences in everything from global brands to television, film, live events, and educational platforms. Her creative projects have included working with folks you may have heard of, like Katy Perry and George Lucas, to name just a few. A sample of her credits also includes work with the Grammy Awards, America's Got Talent, and numerous Broadway productions. Cherice, welcome to HarmonyTALK.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
The honor is ours, and like I always like to begin, I want to remind not only our guests, but our audience that this is a podcast that looks to inspire by sharing stories that demonstrate that dreams can become a reality even when there are great obstacles to overcome. In other words, dreamers become doers. Now, the truth is, I read that same line on just about every episode that we do, and it's a great segue into the podcast. But when preparing for this episode, I have to tell you, Cherice, I was moved so many times because everything I learned and read about you screams inspirational and uplifting. And at this point in your life and career, it's safe to say you're not done dreaming. And I think, even before we got online here, you were talking a little bit about the future and what looks bright for you. So there's still a lot of dreaming, but clearly you are successfully at the doer stage. Right before I got on, I was thinking a buddy of mine, he used to say, in order to get the get, you have to do the do. And from what I know about you already, it seems like you understand that concept. But I guess for our audience, a good place to start would be to know a little bit about you and talk about where your journey began. And if you could maybe start there. Where did the journey begin? Were there supportive parents? Was there an inspiration, a mentor? Was there an aha moment? What did that look like for you at the beginning?
My goodness. I have two sisters, and we grew up in Canada. We were very poor, unfortunately. We didn't have a lot of money. Let's just say that. So my mom entered us in dance, I think when we were about 3 or 4 years old, at a local dance studio. And it became our happy place. And despite the financial struggles that my parents were going through over the years, dance was the one thing that brought joy to our household. And so we would dance in the bedroom, we would dance in the bathroom, we would dance outside on the lawn, we would dance everywhere. And we stayed with it. We just stayed with it. It was our happy place. So that's where it began. And then when I was about 14, I decided to focus more on ballet. And so I joined a ballet school, and I was gifted a contract out of high school with a ballet company. And I was gifted the opportunity to represent Canada in an international competition in Europe. And I was gifted a documentary that was made following my journey. At that age, did I really know what I wanted? No. All I knew was dance was our happy place. And it was the only thing I knew. I didn't go to college. I danced in a ballet company for several years until I realized one day that, yes, I was determined. Yes, I worked hard, and I worked a lot for scholarships. And so did my mom. She really helped us along to try and find government support and whatever to be able to continue what we wanted to do. But the one thing that hit me when I was about 22 years old was, I'm curious. And that's sort of been my go-to my entire career, has been how important curiosity is and how so often we ignore curiosity because we want to feel safe. And many people, and I am not judging anyone because we're all humans, but many people want to stay in a safe place, in a track that they know is okay. But if you're curious and you start to look outside of that and you go, what about that? I think it can bring us to really incredible places. So that's what brought me to my career now. I was curious about the Cirque du Soleil. I was like, I want to go see some of the shows in Las Vegas. So I went to Las Vegas. I saw some shows and I immediately was like, I want to be a part of this world. I'm curious. And so I worked really hard to find a way into that world. So I worked in that world for quite some time. And then my curiosity then brought me back to New York. I was in Montreal, then I was in Vegas, then I was in New York. I just kept following my curiosity. What inspires me right now? What is it that motivates me? And my path has not been linear. And a lot of artists and a lot of people have very, very linear paths. They see in front of them, this is the direction that I want to go. And that's what I want. And I think that for a while I thought, okay, that's where I want to go. But then other things kept pulling me different ways. And if it were not to be for the fact that I was curious, I probably would not be as successful as I am right now. Because if I would have tried to follow that linear path, I might have gotten there or I might not have, and then given up and been like, okay, wasn't meant for me. But my curiosity led me into so many different directions. So I'm really, really grateful for that. And I continue to be very curious. And I continue to remember that there is no linear path. And if you have a passion and if you want to do something, sometimes you might think you're going in the right direction, but if you're open to it, there's signs. There's signs out there. If you pay attention to them, they might be going, hey, what about this? And if you stay curious and you go, maybe I should try that. What I've learned is every single time I've been curious and every different non-linear path that I've taken has gotten me to where I am right now as a creative director and producer and choreographer, working in so many different areas. Some choreographers want to only do ballet. Some only want to do television, but I'm at a place where I do it all. And I'm grateful for taking that leap of faith and being scared because it's scary to step outside of one's comfort zone.
There's a lot there. And if we could, just to go back to what you described as a very humble beginning, right? But when you talked about humble, it wasn't that you were unloved, because it sounds to me like you had parents that loved you. The resources might not have been there, but there was enough to get you to the dance studio. And then once you got there, you talked about how it brought you and your family joy. And I know that there's no greater joy for a parent than to see their kid succeed and to have something to cheer about. From the beginning, aside from the joy of just watching you go out there and put yourself in those places that were challenging you, were you instantly or recognizably good at dance? Or was it that in order to get the get, you have to do the do, and it was the work you put in? Or was it a combination of both?
I think it was a combination of both. My mom told me when I saw you in the dance studio at 4 years old, I immediately thought, oh, she's got talent. Okay. So I don't think that I was lacking in a natural ability in that particular art form, but man, did I work my ass off. And I tell my kids that every day. Like, you don't just go to class and come home and then get on your iPhone. You come home, you review what you did during the day, you stretch your feet. You can't stop. Like, you have to work. I worked so hard and I still work so hard. But working hard doesn't only mean working on the technical side of whatever it is that you're doing. Working hard means making connections, being a kind person, creating a community. For me right now, I have my own podcast The community that I've curated through my producer and my co-host has been so unbelievably humbling because we're all in it together. We're all human.
As a matter of fact, I know from a lot of what I've seen and things that you've written or might even be found on your website, you use that word human a lot. And I'm going to get into that. But, with everything that you've just said, I could talk all day, I'm sure, about the different, forms of dance that you've been involved with and your experience as a choreographer and a director. There's so much that we could go through with each and every one of those different and very specific jobs, if you will, and or interests. But there are two that I want to spend just a few minutes speaking about. And from what I can gather, with your combination of what you've already described as an insatiable curiosity and a non-linear path, you've traveled down many roads and you've accomplished many things, but two roles that to me, from what I've learned about you prior to today, two things that speak clearly to what I think your mission and desire to be human would be educator and mom. And in a little bit, I'm going to revisit that human piece. But let's begin with mom. Now, you've done a lot of things and you've talked about, again, going back to what I opened up with, if, in order to get the get, you've got to do the do. We know you work hard, but has there been anything as difficult and maybe rewarding as parenthood? Let's talk about that for a minute. How hard is being a mom in general? But then put that on top of everything else you do. And how does that all work? Yeah. Now we're talking.
That's why I created my podcast. Being a mom has been the hardest job I've ever had in my life. And I think,
Undoubtedly.
yeah, every parent would agree. So rewarding and so difficult. I think my girls are at an age now at 11 and 13
Oh, those are fun
where,
ages.
yeah, it's really fun because, as toddlers, they're cute, they're like beautiful. And, I miss those innocent years. However, I feel like this is probably my favorite stage. This sort of middle school where I can have adult conversations with them. I can talk to them about real issues. I'm recently divorced, so I'm a single mom now. So I have to be really close to them and talk to them about real stuff. And the more vulnerable I am with them, the closer we are. Because I think that the more that I share with them, mommy's not perfect and I'm doing my best and I love you, but no one is perfect. No one. And all we can do is focus on what inspires us and be good people and be truthful with each other and stay close as a family unit, then we're going to be okay. Because, mommy's going to be working a lot more now. I just need to know that you're okay knowing that I am leading by example. And there's nothing more that I enjoy right now than leading by example for my girls. Because I think that the more they look up to me, which they do, even though they're like, low-key mom, you're really annoying. All of their friends are like, man, your mom's the coolest. Because I just try to lead by example. And there's times that I have to travel. I have to be away from them. But it's teaching them resilience and also the fact that I live in a very, very affluent neighborhood where we have a lot of friends who have big houses and a lot of money. And I don't. I'm a working artist. I'm doing well. I'm able to live in Malibu, which is not a bad thing. However, all the kids want to come over here. And I remember that when I grew up, all of my affluent friends wanted to come to my house because we would play and we would dance and we would just be vulnerable and fun and weird. And I think that that's what's been the biggest joy for me in motherhood is leading by example.
And a lot of that goes back to the human experience that I know we're going to get into in just a moment. But with your girls and being at the ages that they're at, that family work balance, how do you balance that?
Well, we're figuring it out. Still, I think when I was married, I had more support in that sense. Now, their father, who's a wonderful man, we're good friends. We're figuring it out. The custody, and then what happens when mom goes away and does a job for 2 weeks or 3 weeks? How do we figure that out? And do we trade off? And do we, like this holiday season, he was really, really busy. He works in television. So I was like, listen, I don't mind. I'll take them on. I'll take them on. If you can help me out while I'm in Idaho, that would be great. Like we just try to work together. And that's always been my dream and my goal. And for that, I'm very grateful. Divorce is hard. It's not easy, but I'm just grateful that I have a co-parent who's willing to work with me.
That's awesome. And that's the best thing for the kids. Now, at the age that they're at, are they interested in your work? Because you've done some things that most kids their age would be fascinated by. Is there an interest, or are you just mom? And because you're mom, the work doesn't matter to them?
When they were younger, I used to take them with me everywhere. So they were always in the studio. They were always around, like these stars that they didn't even know who they were. They were too young. Now they're old enough to get it. I'm able to take them with me sometimes. One of my daughters is following in my footsteps and wants to be a dancer. The other one, not at all. I keep trying to say to them, did you realize that this person that you just met, my friend was starring in the Broadway musical Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in New York. So, of course, when we went, he brought us backstage. They got to go into the dressing room. They got to go on the stage, see the magic tricks. But a lot of these things that have come as a benefit of my career, they get to experience. Their uncle is a very famous actor. He took them to the Zootopia premiere recently. They got to meet a lot of movie stars. But for them, it's just normal. And so I keep reminding them, do you have any idea
Right.
how lucky you are? But they're kids, So even living in this area, I grew up in Canada, we had snow 50% of the year. We get to go to the beach whenever we want. It's beautiful. Look at the sky. Look at the sky. You have to appreciate, But kids are kids and, they'll appreciate it later. One day they will. I think they do. They really try to, but it's part of their reality that they've grown up with. So I'm cooler now if I'm affiliated with more like pop stars and people that they're really into in this preaching. They don't really care about Katy Perry so much. They don't really care about George Lucas. However, when they went to the Zootopia premiere and there was a bunch of influencers there, they were
All over it.
all over it. And I was like,
Yeah,
who,
sure.
who are these people? Didn't you get to meet Shakira? They were like, yeah, she was sitting 2 seats ahead of us with her kids. I was like, you were sitting next to Shakira? They were like, but yeah, we got to meet this really cool influencer. And I was like, I don't even know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's funny. With all that talk of being a mom, maybe you could spend just a minute talking about Creative Mamas Unplugged, your podcast, because that's kind of the premise I think we're talking about here. And maybe just for our audience, you could share a little bit about what they might hear if they were to tune into that.
So that came about during the pandemic when my kids were, I think, 5 and 6 years old, and I was feeling very isolated and separated from my community. And I was asked by Dance Lab New York to do an interview about being a mom and being a creative. So I started writing. I started writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And I just suddenly, it hit me that, holy cow, being a creative and being a mom is really, really hard because a lot of our industry is freelance. So jobs come in, they come out, they come in, they come out. And sometimes a job comes and you want to grab it. When you're a mom, if you don't have a plethora of babysitters like I did, I was lucky enough to have all of my dancers step in whenever I needed a babysitter, right? But it's hard. It's hard because it's not consistent. It's not like, okay, we can hire a nanny from this time to this time, or I take a day job and then I can pick them up at school every day. Sometimes I'd be traveling to New York or I'd be traveling here or there. And I suddenly felt even more isolated. And then I started talking to a friend of mine and she was going through the exact same thing. And then I started posting a few things on Instagram and all of these moms who are creatives were like, oh my God, I get it. And I was like, oh my God, we're not alone. And so we wanted to start a community. So that's where Creative Mamas Unplugged was born. And we have probably around 70 episodes in the can now. We interview everyone from Broadway choreographers to television directors to producers to actors, actresses. Everyone is a parent. And in fact, now we are starting to expand even beyond parenthood and into more just being a creative. First of all, being a parent is the most creative anyone will ever be in their entire lives because you're constantly having to shift and think of new ways to parent. And you have to be very creative all of the time. If you're not a parent, like I know my sister, for example, both of my sisters don't have kids. They have dogs. They're trying to be creative too, like with their, so we're trying to find ways of expanding it even beyond where we're at right now. But right now, the guests that we've had on, television producers, directors, choreographers, dancers, like it's just been the most satisfying job I think I've ever had in my life. Not because it's a big money-making job. It's because it feels good to be in service. It feels good to give back. And I think you probably have found the same thing with this podcast too. There's something so satisfying about sharing our truth and our vulnerability because then we know we're not alone. And in the world that we live in right now, we all need to know that we're not alone and everyone's going through it. And if we have each other and if we're like, oh, okay, and we can give each other little pieces of advice. And sometimes I legit will listen to my own podcast over and over again because I'm like, oh my God, Kelly Park gave this amazing piece of information. Like, we just interviewed her recently. She's a very successful television director. And she just says, never stop dreaming. Never, ever stop dreaming. We have one life to live, you guys. We're all going to die. So why not just do it? Why not try? Why not try? What do you have to lose? And she's had a hugely successful career. And I love listening to women like this. And we've had some men on the podcast too, but just like feeling not only that inspiration, but also feeling that sense of community and knowing that I'm not alone because it's not easy. It's not easy. I'm not going to pretend that it's easy.
Sure. I think that's one of the great things when you put parents in a room and they talk to each other about being parents and they realize exactly what you're saying. I'm not alone. It's not just me. And then have the opportunity to say, well, how do you handle this? And then all of a sudden that turns into a support group. And that's kind of what your podcast might be. It's a support group for anybody that listens that's a parent to hear that they're not alone and that there's others in the world that are dealing with it and maybe find out how they're dealing with it. And if we could, we're going to move just for a minute away from the podcast and the mom role into the role that you play as an educator. Now, for our listeners, you're a faculty member at the School of Dance at USC and you're an adjunct faculty member at Pace University. And with all the things you do, you're also an educator. And I've heard you say so many wonderful things about your role as an educator, and it all resonated with me. And in my opinion, it ties tightly to your role as a mom. And on your website, you have a short clip that I found where you speak to your role as an instructor. And in it, you say something that really was profound to me. You stated the following: how lucky are we as dancers to express ourselves through our physicality? And what I thought when I heard that was that it transcends so beautifully to just about anything so many of our audience of dreamers and doers is looking to accomplish. What a great way to start whatever you're doing. How lucky are we to ... And the ... is what everybody can finish in their own lives. What are their ... And if you could talk to me about that whole mentality of thinking about what you do by beginning with how lucky are we to ... Talk to me about that. And what does that mean to you?
How lucky are we to be able to express ourselves through our physicality, whatever that means, okay, through dance, through like going for a hike, for any kind of exercise, really. But the one beautiful thing for me that I can speak personally about is being a dancer. So for me, I always tell my dancers, I don't like to see dancers dance. I like to see humans dance. How do we do that? How do we express ourselves? So a lot of my choreography starts with talking and how are you feeling right now? And how can we make that feeling into a movement? It's almost like therapy. It's like the way that I move forward in life, in creativity. Sometimes I'll just go outside and I'll just dance around by myself with my dog. It feels good. I highly suggest anyone out there, dancer or not, if you just like put a dance party on while you're cooking your bacon in the morning, like literally just dance around. Dancing is, I think, one of the most healing things that anyone could ever do. You don't have to be a trained dancer. You just need to have a dance party. You can do it by yourself. You can do it with your dog. You can do it with your friends. You can do it outside on a walk. Sometimes I embarrass my kids because I'll just randomly start dancing in Target. And, but you know what? It feels good.
No, with that in mind, you were talking about you don't want to see dancers dancing. You want to see the human being behind the dancer. And I know earlier we made a little reference to the whole concept of being a human. Whatever version of the arts people might be in, whether they're, a rock band or whether they're a dancer or an actor or whatever the artistry is, it is about connecting. It's always about people. I'm fascinated by the whole concept of authenticity and connecting with an audience. And how do you accomplish that? And if you're watching a dancer, how do you know? How can you observe that connection is being made? What is it that would be striking to you about that connection and authenticity?
For me, the way that I work is not similar to other choreographers. There might be some that work like me, but like I said, I get into the studio and I usually have everyone sit down and I immediately share my story with them. And I'll share something vulnerable that I'm going through in that moment so that they know that they can trust me, that I'm not trying to be a hard ass leader. And then I might ask them questions. How are you feeling right now? What are your struggles right now? What are you going through right now? So we can open up a room of safety. And then from there, we can start to develop the work. And I love education. I work a lot at the collegiate level, a lot with Boston Conservatory. I've worked with Juilliard. I've worked with Pace University. I work a lot with that age group. And what I love about that age group is they're under a lot of pressure because they're graduating from college and they're going to want to get out there and they're going to want to work and they're going to want to do their thing. And I want to constantly remind them to A, the linear path is not the way to go. B, stay curious. C, support each other because we're all in it together. We're not alone. We're all the same. Don't think of it as a competition. And then the last one is, it's community. It's like create a community. My sister and I created a platform back in 2016 where it was all about community and it was all about bringing dancers together from New York and LA. And we connected them with many, many, many people in the industry. And we had a lot of talks with them about the nonlinear path and how important it is. And we're going to be bringing it back soon, I hope. I'm very excited about that because education for me is extremely important because like the podcast, I can do the big jobs. I can do the big choreography jobs and I can be a creative, but there's something so important about being in service. And education for me is a way to be in service and to give back.
That's awesome. I think that's great. And a lot of what you do in the educational world is absolutely, I think, a great service to the folks that you're working with. And in that, I know that there's been some really tremendous quotes. I'm going to go through some Cherice quotes. And these are things that I think might be a good way for us to start wrapping up our time together. But these are some things that I think are truly inspirational. And that's how I started. And our audience, I think, will appreciate this. And this is maybe an opportunity for you to elaborate on one or a couple or all of these quotes. I'll begin with the first one. Be comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. Another one. There is great strength in vulnerability. Another one. Once we allow our emotions to come forward, something magical happens. I mean, those are the words that come out of your mouth. And if you could, I would imagine if anybody's out there trying to find their voice in any field, how do those messages from Cherice manifest?
Oh, man. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and that's the hardest lessons to learn, but that's the only way you can push through and move forward. It's really, really scary. Every time I start a new job, I'm terrified. Even though I'm hired for a big job, like I will literally the night before, like have a panic attack. Like, I don't think I can do this. I don't know. But I step into new and exciting and different jobs all the time. Like I said, I don't take a linear path. I try new stuff all the time. But each time I do it and I'm scared, I step in and magic happens because we have to be able to be like, okay, I trust this. And if you have the right people around you, and if you have the right state of mind, and if you believe in yourself, and if you believe that, don't worry, this is going to work out, as scared as I am right now, it usually does. So that's that quote. What was the other quote that you said?
There is great strength in vulnerability.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, my God. Because that's what creates connection. We can't connect with each other unless we're vulnerable around each other. We have to be vulnerable. And that's scary because people don't want to show vulnerability because in this world, you have to be tough. You have to be strong. You have to be like, we have to fight. But what's wrong with saying, you know what? It's hard being a human. Right? Because then other people go, hey, actually, I feel that way too. And then more people will be like, wait, me too. And then you create a community that builds more strength than trying to fight your way through life. Like I'm a huge, huge believer in vulnerability and it's scary. And I try through my podcast and through my Instagram to show my vulnerability. I could probably do more. I'm working on it every day too, but we are all vulnerable. At being a human, it's natural. That's just part of being human.
It all comes back to that, being human and knowing that we're all in the same boat and that we are there for each other. I guess that's part of your message. I know there's a lot more that we could talk about, but we do have to start wrapping it up. But before we do, maybe you'd want to let our audience know, what are you currently working on? What's next? What does Cherice have in store for 2026?
Well, there's a few projects that I have that are under wraps. As I said, I just signed with a new management company, so we are going to be sharing that news soon. You'll have to have me back on. I am going to be teaching and choreographing for the University of Michigan, which is exciting because I haven't been there before. And like I've told you, being on the collegiate level is exciting for me. I am on staff at Pace University and University of Southern California. So when I am in town, I can teach classes for these incredible emerging dancers. Like I said, my sister and I are talking about bringing back our program, Access Connect, which we are very excited about. And the rest is top secret right now, but it'll come out eventually.
All right. We'll leave it at that. It's top secret. But aside from that, you definitely have a busy 2026 ahead of you. And I have to thank you for the time that you've already spent with us today, because 2026 has already started and I know how busy you already are. So taking time out of your day is greatly appreciated by all of us here at Harmony Talk.
And thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored. I'm glad that it worked out.
Absolutely. I've been talking with Cherice Barton, choreographer, creative producer, director, and educator, and maybe most importantly, a dreamer and a doer. You can follow Cherice on her socials at Cherice Barton, Creative Mamas Unplugged, and ChericeBarton.com. If you enjoyed my discussion with Cherice and want to hear more inspiring stories from dreamers and doers, please visit HarmonyTALKpodcast.com or any other platform where you listen to your favorite podcasts. This has been Harmony Talk by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm Greg Frigoletto. Thank you to Cherice Barton for being with us today. To our listeners, continue to dream and keep doing.